I watched, look at that. Let's call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Here.
Mrs. Rogers? Here. Mr. Roach? Here. Mrs. Barney?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the October 15th, 2024 minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
We are going to skip to number 5, the solicitor's report.
Yeah, a couple of items to update tonight. The Rules and Regs Committee, we met twice since our last meeting to discuss a couple of matters attendant to the Lawrence project. The first is an ordinance proposal to refer to the township, which you all have a draft copy of. We can review that, and if any suggestions or comments are needed on that, we can amend that before we send to the township for our proposal to amend the connection requirements section of the ordinance, as well as the abandonment of obsolete systems.
Can you give us the specifics on that? There were 2 items actually from the last meeting.
Yep, the first portion that we would look to amend is for projects that are done by CTMA or the township for required connections. We would outline specific notice requirements and the time to connect for them. So in summary, it would be from the proper notice given from either CTMA or the township. Within 60 days, there would be an application filed for sewer connection and remittance of a tapping fee to the authority. And then within 120 days of receipt of the same notice, there would be a connection to the system.
So in essence, we are extending the 60-day tap-in to 120.
Correct.
For projects specific to new CTMA connections.
Correct. But still within that 60-day window, residents will need to make the application to the authority for connection.
Okay.
We're just extending the time frame to actually connect.
Okay.
And then the second portion is a slight amendment to section 187-3, which contemplates abandonment of obsolete systems. So this is in regard to septic tanks. Our committee's proposal is that we are going to move forward with defining what the authority recommends for abandonment of obsolete systems in our rules and regs. And in regard to the ordinance, we contemplate that any and all connections or connections with the occupied building which have been severed shall be broken, destroyed, filled, or subsequently altered in such a manner that sanitary sewage can no longer enter therein. And then we'll define that by what our recommendations are in our rules and regs.
Okay. And that is a recommendation to abandon via those methods.
Correct.
It is not a requirement.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve sending proposed ordinance amendment proposal to the township regarding sewer connections?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to approve the draft letter to citizens regarding mandatory tap-in connections that will be held in abeyance until we are ready to proceed with tap-ins?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And do I hear a motion a motion to approve a resolution amending the authority's rules and regulations attendant to time requirements for mandatory connections, abandonment of septic systems, and language regarding penalty provisions?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions? Thank you.
The only other thing would be one item for executive session.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brett, engineer's report, please.
Yes, good evening. Sorry I was a few minutes late.
Did not expect the traffic on 79 tonight.
It's raining.
I did find a new way hero, so. We did send in our report, and I did hand out copies this evening. I believe all the motions are on there for the various contracts and the Penvest requisitions, et cetera. Line work has been completed. I think Larry's been reporting on that. We're down to punch list items. There's a walkthrough with the township on the paving items. Supposed to happen this week, and then plant work's been ongoing, so.
Is your mic on? It should be down. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yep, sorry about that. The plant work is ongoing, so. I did attach to the report also this evening the estimate for Southview, the sewer extension. We looked at it, both gravity and lift station. Years ago, this was, I think, scratched around the surface but never went anywhere. Gravity does work. The line gets pretty flat. You have to go to a 10-inch line to get it to work grade-wise, so that you hold your velocity. But it is cheaper by, I think it was $500,000-$600,000. I think there's less risk with the gravity system versus the force main, because force main with mechanical parts and stuff, you can have larger price increases than you do mostly with the gravity sewer. So I think next steps are, we're not sure what they had in their 537 plan. The project, they haven't really get funded. But I think show them this and see if this is competitive with the cost that they've been anticipating. The nice thing with this is you do service a couple miles of customers in Cecil that would not have service, and probably be very difficult to afford to get them service without having a joint project. So it may get legs, but I think they asked to take a look at it. I think it's good for the authority, good for the township to have this area get sewer service, because one thing to remember, all the failing systems that's in this watershed come through Cecil. So if we can eliminate a couple coal patch towns that have poor sewer service, there is a big benefit also to the township, to the clean water in the area. So it is worth looking at the cost. So we did attach the memo for everybody to digest. Next month we can answer any questions on it. If the board's okay with it, we will just forward it over to KLH and the authority at Mount Pleasant and let them think about it. And then they can get back to Mike, and if they want to come in and meet with the board and talk about next steps, then we can do that. So.
Okay. Any recommendations on that? Is everybody okay with them turning it over?
I think that would be okay, just the first step, so they can see what's there, and then before we go any further, it's either gonna be, they're gonna look at that price and go, no, it's out of our price range with our grants, and then it goes nowhere. But at least now, on the authority end of it, we are educated on what it would cost to do that. If we would ever wanna store that in the future, you have an idea.
I think it's good to know that it can be a gravity system, because I think that's definitely a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah, and
After
I don't know
a
if I would-
decision might be made, how long a period of time would that be before we saw any income from that?
I would think, looking at the lineal footage on this, it's at least a couple-year process
Okay,
to get the construction. I mean, they've been at it for 10 years, but they'd have to get 537 plan updated between Cecil and them, and then Part 2 permits for the line work in Cecil, plus their line work, and then construction. So we're probably talking 3 or 4 years
okay.
till it come in. Because they'd have a tapping fee, on top of the construction dollars, all that, which again is good for the authority.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, our budget committee has already met once. Is this, how close is this? If it's 3 to 4 years out, of course, we don't have to worry about that right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, follow through with that.
Okay.
And we'll see what next steps are.
Good deal. We'll keep you updated then. Thank
Okay,
you.
Sure. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve partial payment number 17 in the amount of $364,681.52, and that's in regard to contract number 21-STP1 rebid Village of Lawrence Sewage Treatment Plant?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear s-
I'll second it.
roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
For the same contract, do I hear a motion to have change order number 8 for the treatment plant for incorporation of the US EPA contract requirements per that grant's requirements, so no cost or time change at this point in time? Do I hear that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Penvest payment requisition. Do I hear a motion to approve Penvest payment requisition number 18 in the amount of $462,147.25?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion for resolution for statewide LSA grant application for Cherry Brook wastewater treatment plant infrastructure improvements in the amount of $602,550?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney? Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And do I hear a motion to approve resolution for statewide LSA grant application for the Lawrence Sewage Facility Phase 2 in the amount of $1 million?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Okay, business manager's report, please.
First item is financial reports. Your month's packets included the reports for September 2024. Are there any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Second item, unpaid sewer and tap-in lien update. In your packets, I included a lien account summary report for the years 2023 and 2024. These reports show any customer who has had a liened account for tap-in and or unpaid sewage. On the last page, you can see how much was collected each year. The outstanding balances for these liens are forever changing due to the monthly interest that gets applied to the accounts, that there are no payment being made, and also adding new unpaid sewer bill liens. So far this year, I have had to lien 3 properties. I'm currently working on collecting from 9 individuals with high outstanding balances. I have sent intent to liens, hoping for payment. If I do not receive any payment by the due date, I will forward them on to be liened. Okay, and a breakdown of current lien statuses. Unpaid sewer bill liens. We do have 1 customer that is making monthly payments. 9 customers who have not made payments, and they are either currently shut off for non-pay or they are in active accounts. And we have 34 customers that have paid off their liens, and several of these individuals had multiple liens. Tap-in lateral liens, 7 customers are making monthly payments. 10 customers have not made any payment or set up a payment plan. And there are 14 customers who have paid off their lien in full. So far for 2024, I have collected a little over $27,000. Most of the amount is from individuals who are making their monthly agreed upon payments. I did have 1 or 2 individuals who paid off their lien this year. Any questions about liens?
Nope.
Okay. Item 3, the yearly deduct meter read update. Our field guys completed the yearly deduct meter reads in October. The November bill will reflect these reads for the customers who participate in our deduct meter program. We did have a few premises that we had to send out letters to that their remote reader was not working or they did not have one installed. This year, we had a total of 121 customers who participated. And the last item, it's been resolved and there's no need for discussion for that
Okay.
one.
Very good, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, authority manager report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, just a few items. Old business, we are still in the process of permit renewals. Miller's Run, we did receive the draft permit. It was properly advertised. Have not heard anything back on the final permit. Teodori and Cherry Brook, no update on that status, so we're still waiting to hear. Silver Creek Development, I have been working with them. They reached out to me. I sent over the pre-development, pre-construction agreement for them to review. I also sent over the required construction checklist of what would be needed. We are working with them also to bring their developer escrow up to date. It's behind. Because it changed, it was Scormese, then it was Miranda, so we're working to get through that to make sure we get that taken care of. I did forward the letter on to them from LSSE regarding the requested changes. They are talking it over, and we'll see if they do an appeal. But that's the status of that currently. Gerber Collision, there is no change on that. I have not heard anything more since we issued the comment letter back on April 23rd of 24. L&S Wastewater, they contacted the authority about us acquiring the treatment plant and collection system known as the Monaco plan. I have started to review this. Big problem is there's really no camera footage, so I would really want to see some more camera footage, and there's some other questions there that I'm going to get back to them. So I need to see where we're at with that before I can make a recommendation. So I will have a recommendation for the board at the December meeting. Miller's Run Pump Station, we sent that pump out and had it repaired. It came back in last week. Tomorrow, the gentleman is coming out that did the upgrades to the control panel to finalize installing that pump. We're going to rebuild the air release valve, and that pump will be back up and operational, so we will have everything good down at Miller's Run. We'll have a system if the VFDs go down. There's still a couple minor items down there that we need to address at some point, but I will bring those up on a further report. I have not heard anything back from PennDOT regarding the Georgetown Road. They wanted to do some repairs on that with the maintenance bond. I reached out, did not hear anything, so I will follow up again, but nothing to report on that, so there's no change. I did report that we had problems with the lighting at Miller's Run, and basically I'm proud to report that we were able to get that rectified. It was mostly burnout bulbs, 1 or 2 photo sensors, so mostly everything is working. We only have 2 or 3 lights that we have to take a look at, that there may be a broken wire somewhere in there, but the building's all lit up. We're lit up, so we saved some money there. It just was a matter of buying bulbs and some photo eyes. So now when you go down there, it's not pitch black. Under new business, the pickleball facility at 19 Mayview Road, they've been wanting to get the facilities planning module resolved. Basically, at the end of the day, they dropped off a check for $5,000, which is needed, and I have it on my agenda this evening to authorize signing the agreement, the pre-developer agreement. Then that will lead into them getting the results of the facility planning module, and then we will work on getting the taps paid for before I issue the official tap. So like I said, again, this is moving forward, so we're getting somewhere there. TOA had reached out to me regarding a maintenance bond. It is maintenance bond NFB 731-4696. This was done in January of 2023. These maintenance bonds are good for 18 months, so we're into November. So basically they ask if that maintenance bond can be released. Everything checks out, so that maintenance bond can be released. And then the only other thing that I have this evening that would need a motion is motion to approve, reject, or table authorizing modifying the CTMA standard details for acceptable lateral connection materials. Basically, our current standards call out for SDR 35 and Schedule 40. I would like to add SDR 26 to that to give the homeowners another option for when they connect. It's just another thing to put on there, but it's not currently there, so we need to add that on there. In your packets, everybody got a copy of the Rules and Regulations Committee memo. It's just for you to review. I wanted to get that out there. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those. We also met with the Budget Committee last Friday, and it seems like everything is moving along. There's just a couple final things that we need clarification on. So I should be able to present the budget for approval at next month's meeting. The only other thing to think about is on Schedule A, which is our fees. There is currently a fee we don't have on there. Occasionally, we do get people that call in for a rush dye test where they want this within 48 hours. They want a short time turnaround. Due to the limited time of staff with them having to go out, I think if they want it, in discussing it with Shanna and Beth, I think it would be if they want it in 10 days or less, there should be an extra fee for that, not just a normal fee, because it basically, the girls in the office have to get this prepared. I have to juggle a schedule around to get the guys out to dye test it. But if they want it in this quick turnaround, they should have to pay for it. They shouldn't get a break, because they want it rushed on my end. We get that, it's far and few between, but you do get these realtors that will call in and they want it done. Well, can't you do it tomorrow? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. We need notice. So I think if they want to do it, it's fine. We'll accommodate them. But, for our time and our effort, I think we should, have
Do we need a
something in.
motion to approve that?
I would have that on the meeting for next month. We're going to finalize all of that. I'll get that out to everybody before, because I have to change that Schedule A to update year 5 of the rate increase that we implemented. So I just want to go through that. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that that's what we were thinking.
Okay.
So other than that, that is what I have this evening. If there are any questions, I will be happy to entertain them.
I think just for clarity, one more time from maybe some of the motions that were approved under the solicitor's report regarding tap-in letters and timeline. So I think we've already discussed that letters probably will not go out until spring now, correct? However, if somebody wants to tap in earlier than that and is capable, what is the recommendation there?
Once we get through everything, I would make the recommendation, and it was the recommendation discussing with the engineer, there is no reason that if they wanted to connect early, they can connect early. What I'm finding out is that the Penvest, for them to get that funding, it may take a little bit longer than what they're thinking, because Penvest has certain requirements that they're needed, so they're not going to be able to move forward. But if we have somebody that's ready to go earlier, I think we should let them tie in.
Okay, and then once that letter, there is that 60-day somewhat application and acknowledgement, but then an additional 60 days to the current ordinance once that's passed by the township supervisors.
Correct. That will give them total 120 days to get connected, because that gives them a little time. And again, the big thing that I want to get out there, and I will reiterate this to the residents, is one of the things that we want to know is if you have every intention of tying in, but you're having a problem getting the funding, or there's something going on, reach out to the authority and let us know, and explain what's going on, that we can evaluate this. So we're not thinking that you're just not wanting to tie in, communication. Then we can go ahead and formulate a game plan without saying, okay, they're not wanting to tie in. You take them to the magistrate, where it's not that they don't want to, they either don't know, or they just need a little bit more time. So it's very important that they communicate to that so we can work with them. But the other thing as well is when we do send this letter out, I want to have a very detailed FAQ section that kind of explains everything, you know, how the procedure works, you know, the tie-in, materials, you know, all of this stuff. So it's very clear for the residents to understand. And as always, you know, if there are residents that need help or they have questions, you know, contact the authority. I'll be more than happy to go out and meet with them, you know, answer any questions, so we can try to make this process as smooth as possible.
And included in that would be the abandonment recommendations?
Yes, because I was approached about that. Supervisor Cassiola called me about that it was on the Miller's Run project, that they had the option of abandoning it or collapsing it. So I did some research. I contacted the DEP. DEP's recommendation was they don't have any jurisdiction over that. They told me to reach out to the Washington County Sewage Council. Washington County Sewage Council said, really, that's up to your local ordinance, so it goes back to our local ordinance. So again, it's come to my attention that there may be structures on top of these tanks, whatever. I just want to make sure that they are abandoned properly, that we're not having an issue 5-6 years down the road. As long as they're abandoned, it's, you know, I'm willing to, if that's what we did on the last one, I'm willing to do it. But our recommendation is so the resident won't have a problem. In all the research I've done, the recommendation for abandonment is to pump the tank out, remove the lid, crush the lid. You can fill it with stone or sand. If you don't do it that way, you can crush the tank in on itself, that sort of thing. But ultimately, we're going to give a couple options there, but we want to make sure that however it's abandoned, nothing can enter that tank is what we want ultimately.
Okay.
Just need some more clarification on that because it is kind of vague, and I just want to make sure that, you know, all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Right. And then last item that I had noted from previous, last month is basement drains. Is that been addressed?
Yes, the floor drains will be allowed to be tied in. It will be specifically no extra drain or no extra water, like from downspouts, leaking foundations. If there's an internal French drain, gutters, downspouts, anything like that, that is not gray water or sanitary, that cannot be added in because it will put a extra burden on our treatment system.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That does not require any changes to the documentation we have.
Okay.
Because it's clear.
Great. All right. So do I hear a motion to approve release of maintenance bond NFB 7314696 for Traditions of America Phase 4 manhole 3-8 to 4-9 and manholes 4-3 to 4-10?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
This next motion is in regard to Dollard Development. Do we need to know what's going on there? Can you enlighten us?
Dollar Development is the pickleball facility.
Okay, all right. So do I hear a motion to approve signing of Dollar Development LLC pre-development agreement?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And do I hear a motion to approve, authorize modifying the CTMA standard detail for acceptable lateral construction materials?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any correspondence this month?
No.
No? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve payment of expenses and transfer of funds for payroll and invoices. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Okay. Comments from the floor? Any tonight? Okay. I'd like to make a motion for executive session for personnel matters and litigation and property. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
I gotta do this, right? Thanks for coming, Karen. Thanks. Oh, you're coming in here. Thank you.
Thank you. All good. Yeah. We'll catch up soon on,
Coming out of executive session at 7:45. I'd like to make a motion for adjournment. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Aye, aye, aye.
Aye.
Meeting
Aye.
adjourned.
Oh, we got sound checks.